Hey y'all, welcome back to week 3 of Black History Month, Black Animes. This week I want to talk about an anime that I didn't know was an anime at first, and I watched it so long ago before I even started watching other animes. I watched it in college. It started off as a comic book strip in 1996 or 98, don't quote me, by Aaron Magruder on hitlist.com, and it wasn't adapted into an anime until about 2005 when it aired on Adult Swim, and that is the Boondocks. The Boondocks is as controversial as it is good, and it's definitely on more than a few of some of the best anime of all time lists, and that's just because it really is. So instead of me doing a review of the whole show, since it ran for 4 seasons, I just want to do a little review of my favorites of each season. I guess you could call it a highlight reel. I just really love the show, but I didn't start off loving the show, and I feel like a lot of people feel the same way. So let's hop into it. Okay, so my first favorite episode of the first season is episode 4, and that is Granddad's Fight, and that is quite possibly my favorite episode of the whole series. One, because Colonel Stinkmeaner is so funny. Like, he's even more funny and hateful than Uncle Ruckus. No relation. And you know what? Everybody else must think he was funny too, because they brought back his likeness or ideas of him in some iteration in every season, except for season 4, because I haven't seen that yet. But yeah, the idea of somebody being ornery and hateful from birth is just hilarious to me. And then the fact that their fight got so lethal. Like, what? 2 old people fighting? I've seen 2 old people fighting. It don't end up like that. But yeah, he's hilarious. My second favorite episode of the first season is episode 9, and that is Return of the King. When Martin Luther King Jr. came back from a coma, I guess, not back from the dead, and he got a chance to see how the world is in his absence, and he absolutely hated it. I didn't think it was funny. I actually thought it was kind of sad. But I liked it. It was one of my favorites because I feel like it would provoke a lot of conversation, and it definitely has off-screen about what would he think about what the world is like today. The episode got a lot of controversy, but I feel like it was well needed. Like, it really makes you think, what would any of the civil rights leaders that are gone, the ones that are no longer here with us, what would they think if they came back and saw the world as it is today, the world that they fought for? Like, how would they feel? And I feel like there are many different valid answers to that. So yeah, this one was not exactly for comedic value, but it was one of my favorites nonetheless. Honorable mention for season 1 would be episode 10, I believe, and that is the itis. The itis is hilarious, number 1. The itis is real, number 2. Because before I tried my best to start transitioning over to plant-based foods and a lot more meatless options, I got the itis almost every single day. Sunday dinner was not the only day I got the itis. And we all be walking around now, or, well, depending on the generation, and you see the results of the itis every single day from the foods that we eat. So I don't know if that was around the time of the Popeye shit. Oh no, it wasn't. It was before then. But yeah, that turned the itis into like a cultural phrase that we use now all the time if it hadn't been before then. So yeah. Second honorable mention is episode 12. Riley was here when he was tagging all the houses in the subdivision with like spray paint and stuff. And the only reason why I mentioned it is because it gave us a little bit of a glimpse of the boys' parents. At least I believe that's who they were, especially because when he showed Granddad his tagging on the house, it was of a picture of a black couple, and Granddad didn't get mad at Riley and said he was like proud. So I was like, oh, this must be family. Then it was like, ding, ding, oh, this must be their parents. And that's pretty much some of the only references we get to them throughout that. So if ever there was a reboot, I would love to hear a little bit more about their parents, about the backstory, because that is all we got. Okay, so for season 2, my first favorite episode would be episode 11, and that is the S word. And that is possibly my second favorite episode of the entire series. And that is because it is based off a situation that actually happened in Louisville, Kentucky. Like, now it's a long time ago, but it's when one of our teachers called the student the N-word, and he did a whole diagram of the difference between ER and saying the ending with an A. And in the show, Riley was the student who said it, or who said he did not say it, and the teacher said it to him. Anyway, it was hilarious, and I was shocked that it made national news like that, to the point where somebody picked it up and put it on the show. That's not why you would want your city to be on the map, but it is hilarious nonetheless. Okay, so for season 2, my first favorite episode would be episode 11, and that is the S word. And that is possibly my second favorite episode of the entire series. And that is because it is based off a situation that actually happened in Louisville, Kentucky. Like, now it's a long time ago, but it's when one of our teachers called the student the N-word, and he did a whole diagram of the difference between ER and saying the ending with an A. And in the show, Riley was the student who said it, or who said he did not say it, and the teacher said it to him. Anyway, it was hilarious, and I was shocked that it made national news like that, to the point where somebody picked it up and put it on the show. That's not why you would want your city to be on the map, but it is hilarious nonetheless. My second favorite episode of the season is episode 15, and that is the Uncle Ruckus reality show. I don't love it for any reason in particular. It's just that it's hilarious. You see more and more the viewers get a lot more backstory on Uncle Ruckus. Not that it makes him any less ridiculous, but it follows him on his day-to-day life and his like thousands of jobs, because he's not lazy like the alleged regular black person is. And it doesn't have any intrinsic meaning. It's just hilarious. So for season 3, my favorite episode, or my first favorite episode, is episode 5, and that is Stinkmeaner Returns, the Hatocracy. And that is actually like probably the third funniest to me episode in the series, because now that Stinkmeaner is dead, his crew that he used to roll with in the senior community that was also hateful like him and did like random acts of mayhem, came back to find Granddad to avenge his death. The reason why it was so funny to me is the old people were incredibly, oh my God, they were so funny. And the beginning fight between Uncle Ruckus and the Hatocracy crew, like, I had to run it back a couple of times because it was that funny. My next favorite episode of season 3 was episode 11, which is the lovely Ebony Brown. And that is when, instead of going on a blind date off MySpace, Granddad instead goes jogging and falls in love with a lady named Ebony Brown. And she is so pleasant and educated with good credit and beautiful that even Uncle Ruckus falls in love with her. But the thing about it is, Granddad doesn't actually truly love himself, so he sabotages the connection between them, and he goes nuts. Like, he loses his mind about her, and he lets his insecurities get in the way of their relationship, and she eventually had to cut it off. The reason why this is one of my favorites is because if you let the show tell it, bitches ain't shit. Excuse my French. I wasn't expecting this to be monetized anyway. But, I mean, women are like either completely nuts in Granddad's case, or she-boons in Uncle Ruckus's case, or just various degrees of awful. And in this case, Ebony Brown was just, there was no fault to be found with her, and the fault was all with Granddad. So I liked that it finally showed women in a pleasant light, but I also liked that it humanized Granddad a lot more. So it was kind of a sad episode, but it was one of my favorites. I only have one honorable mention for season 3, and that is episode 12, Mr. Medicinal. In the beginning of the episode, Granddad falls out and he has some sort of attack or something, and they take him to the doctor, and he finds out that while he does have ailments, nothing is as bad as it seems, but his stress about his life or whatever, like his general disposition, is what is causing his health to become worse. So Thugnificent, who I believe now is a UPS man, gives him some bud. So he smokes some marijuana and he calms all the way down, and then he begins to feel better. But he also calms down to the point where his whole personality and demeanor changes, and the boys don't even know, like they don't even recognize him anymore. It's funny, but I liked it more so for the underlying message. Sometimes it is our minds that will plant the seed and cause it to grow. yeah, you can have stuff that's wrong with you, but the constant worry and the constant ruminating over it is what is going to cause it to like get worse. So Granddad ends up getting arrested because the Magnificent lied to him and said that it was legal. It was not legal. And he had to give up the weed. So he went back to being regular Granddad. But I think the underlying message in the show is not exactly to smoke weed, but really to calm down. Because the weed itself not only has inflammatory or anti-inflammatory effect, but also I guess a bit of a placebo effect. Because when you calming down, you're not worried about things, and when you're not worried about things, they cannot germinate. So yeah, it's definitely, maybe it is a favorite. I don't know. I'm kind of sad that the Boondocks will never come back again, but with the passing of John Witherspoon, who is like a central point to the show, I can't imagine that it would be the same in a positive way or even similar. So I'm just happy that we have it for what it was and what it represented, and that it did so many things. It sparked a lot of controversy, but it also sparked a lot of important conversations. And we see a lot of Huey and Riley in everybody, like, or maybe not everybody, but you know what I mean. And Uncle Ruckus represents the internalized hatred of the black community. Granddad to me represents either boomers or even older than that. Like, they were all really important. And I cannot imagine that people will not continue to watch this show for years and years forward. So yeah, I know all y'all out there love them too. So I'd love to know you guys' favorite episodes. So we only have a partial week left of Black History Month, but I'm still going to do one more review. But I could not leave the Boondocks out. And also, if you could, let me know who your favorite character was in the show, because I know it wasn't just the four guys that I mentioned repeatedly. It was also Mr. Dubois and his family, Mr. Wunsler and his son, or his grandson, just a lot of people. It was a hilarious show, and they're really cultural icons, so.